Jace had always been invisible. Not literally, of course. He could see himself in the reflection of the cantina's grimy window. But in the eyes of the galaxy, he might as well have been a ghost. At 29, he worked as a lowly data clerk at the Interstellar Trade Hub, a sprawling station that hummed with activity day and night. Ships from 1,000 systems docked there, merchants shouted over the constant chatter of different languages, and alien species of all shapes and sizes hurried through the corridors. Everyone seemed to have a purpose, a name that carried weight, or at least an aura of importance. Jace had none of that. He shuffled from table to table, wiping crumbs off the counter, taking drink orders, logging messages into the hub's database. It was dull work, but he liked the predictability. At the end of the day, he went back to his small, cramped room in a dormitory that smelled faintly of ozone and recycled air. He ate synthetic noodles, watched old holo shows, and went to bed alone. That was his life. Safe. Ordinary. Invisible. The cantina was crowded tonight, as it always was. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting a kaleidoscope of colors on the polished floors. Music from a human band blended awkwardly with alien instruments, and the smell of fried protein mixed with sweet spices filled the air. Jace moved among the tables, delivering drinks, cleaning up spilled trays and avoiding eye contact with anyone who might notice him. It was a skill he had perfected over the years. Be quiet, be small, and blend in. Then everything changed. The doors of the cantina slid open with a soft hiss, and a hush fell over the room. Subtle, but unmistakable. A group of aliens entered, moving with the precision of dancers, their steps measured and deliberate. The chatter dimmed to a murmur. Jace didn't look up at first. He had learned not to. Humans rarely got attention in this part of the galaxy, and most of it was negative. But then he heard it, a soft, commanding voice that spoke in perfect galactic standard. The kind of voice that could make people listen even if they weren't supposed to. Jace looked up and froze. She was tall, elegant, and impossibly graceful. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, pale gold with a subtle glow that made it look almost liquid. Her eyes were a deep violet, reflective and intelligent, scanning the room as if she could see every secret thought of everyone present. She wore a long, flowing robe that shimmered with patterns that changed color depending on the angle of light. A small entourage followed her, silent and obedient, carrying strange devices and weapons that hummed faintly. Princess Elara. He had heard the name before, whispered among traders and smugglers alike. She was the heir to the Glee's empire, a civilization known for its power, its wealth, and its unshakable rules. She was untouchable, unreachable, the kind of figure humans only ever saw on HoloNews clips. And yet, here she was, walking straight into his cantina. She moved through the tables like a gentle wind, observing, noting, and judging. Jace ducked slightly, unsure if he should run or stay. Then it happened. She stopped at his table. "Sit," she said, her voice soft but firm, pointing at the chair across from him. Jace blinked. He wanted to apologize, explain that he was nobody, a simple human with no influence, no skill, no story worth telling. But the words died in his throat. He couldn't move. Somehow, she had chosen him. Out of hundreds of beings, some of whom were princes, merchants, mercenaries, and spies, she had chosen him. Okay, he said finally, his voice cracking. She smiled, a small, enigmatic curl of her lips that seemed to hold a secret. She sat down gracefully, her presence dominating the table in a way that made it impossible for anyone else nearby to ignore her. The other patrons gave them space, murmuring among themselves in low tones. Cameras hidden in the corners of the cantina swiveled, recording everything, but nobody dared approach. "I like your planet," she said, her tone almost conversational, as if she were speaking to a friend she had known for years. "Simple, honest, yet full of potential." Jace's mouth went dry. "Thank you," he stammered. He had no idea what to say. He wasn't trained to talk to royalty. He wasn't trained to talk to anyone who might change his life in a single sentence. She leaned forward, slightly, resting her hands on the table. "Tell me about yourself, Chase. I want to know what makes a human like you tick." The world around him blurred. His life of quiet invisibility, of days spent in numbers and forms, seemed irrelevant. Here was someone from across the stars, someone of unimaginable status, asking about him. Not his work, not his family connections, not his intelligence ratings or trade scores. Him. So he told her. About his small room in the dormitory, about his nights spent staring at the stars, about his dreams of seeing worlds beyond the hub. He spoke about the tiny joys of being human, the taste of fresh fruit, the laughter of a friend, the thrill of solving a problem no one else could. He spoke cautiously at first, then with more confidence, as if some invisible barrier had broken. Elara listened. She asked questions that made him think, that made him consider things he had never thought worthy of discussion. She laughed softly when he described a minor mishap involving a spilled tray and a group of impatient merchants. She nodded thoughtfully when he spoke about the complexities of human relationships. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The cantina's crowd slowly thinned, but they barely noticed. When she finally stood to leave, Jace felt a strange emptiness, as if part of the world he had known had vanished. But she didn't leave him empty-handed. From a small pouch, she retrieved a device no larger than his palm. It glowed faintly, humming with energy that made his fingers tingle. "Keep this," she said. "It's a signal. If the galaxy ever tries to underestimate you..." "It will find you are not so ordinary." Jace stared at the device. "I don't understand. You will," she replied. Then, as quietly as she had arrived, she departed, gliding through the cantina's doors and out into the stars beyond. The murmurs of the remaining patrons filled the space she left behind. Jace sat frozen, the small device warm in his hand, and for the first time in his life, he felt, noticed. That night he lay in his tiny room, staring at the ceiling and turning the device over in his hands. It pulsed softly, as if alive, a quiet heartbeat that matched his own. He thought about the princess, about her curiosity, about the way she had seen him, not as a nobody, but as someone capable of meaning in a galaxy full of chaos. And he realized something. Maybe he had been invisible for most of his life, but invisibility was not weakness, it was preparation. The world had ignored him, yes, but perhaps that was only so he could surprise it when the time came. Sleep came eventually, but dreams were restless. He saw stars he had never seen, ships gliding silently between galaxies, and a figure with violet eyes watching him, smiling knowingly. The next morning, the cantina felt different. Even the neon light seemed brighter. Even the smell of fried protein carried a hint of possibility. Humans were not meant to be unnoticed forever. He was about to learn that, and the galaxy, vast and indifferent, would soon discover that the human named Jace was far more than anyone had imagined. The journey from the interstellar trade hub to Glee's Prime was nothing like Jace had imagined. Space travel, he had thought, would be quiet, predictable, and orderly. Instead, it was loud, chaotic, and terrifying. The ship they traveled on was sleek, built for speed and comfort. But the corridors still felt alien to him. Lights flashed in strange colors, the air shimmered with artificial gravity, and every surface seemed too clean, too smooth. Jace followed Princess Elara cautiously, carrying only the essentials, his simple bag, a datapad, and the strange humming device she had given him. Every step he took felt significant, as if the universe had started noticing him. Guards moved around them with silent precision, scanning every corner, every shadow. Even the crew, seasoned veterans of interstellar travel, looked nervous in the presence of the princess. He had barely spoken a word since leaving the cantina, still trying to make sense of the night's events. Alara, as always, seemed calm. She walked with an elegance that made him feel clumsy, yet strangely protective. Her violet eyes constantly scanned, analyzing everything, and occasionally they met his gaze. Each time, a faint smile touched her lips, reminding him that he was not entirely out of place. "Do you ever get used to this?" Jace asked quietly, breaking the silence. "To what?" she replied, her voice gentle but commanding. "This attention?" Being watched all the time. Being in the middle of everything. Alara paused, leaning against the ship's railing to look out at the endless field of stars. "You do not get used to it," she said softly. "You learn to move through it, to act when others hesitate." "That is why you are interesting, Jace. You are not blinded by protocol or fear. You are human, unpredictable. That unpredictability is powerful." Jace stared at her, unsure how to respond. He had never considered unpredictability a strength. Humans survived by following rules, by being careful, by avoiding unnecessary risks. Yet here she was, an alien princess from a far-reaching empire, telling him that the very thing he thought made him ordinary might actually make him remarkable. Before he could process her words, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and the hum of the engines changed pitch. Crew members scrambled, shouting commands in a language Jace barely understood. Alara's guards moved instantly into formation, weapons drawn, eyes scanning every monitor. "Pirates!" one of the guards said sharply.
"They've tracked us from the outer rim."
Jace's stomach twisted. Pirates in space were nothing like the stories in holo shows. They were ruthless, intelligent, and deadly. Entire ships had been destroyed in seconds. And now, Jace thought grimly, he was on a ship with the princess, in the middle of nowhere, facing people who would kill him without a second thought. The ship's intercom crackled.
"Brace for boarding! Shields at 50%!
Jace's mind raced. He was not a fighter. He did not know how to use a weapon, and yet the moment demanded action. He remembered the device Alara had given him. Its soft hum now felt urgent, alive. He pulled it from his pocket, examining it. Nothing in his human logic explained its function, but he had a feeling it might help. The first pirate drone burst through the ship's outer shields, a sleek black craft armed with laser cannons. The ship shook violently. Alarms screamed in Jace's ears. Alara's guards fired back, their energy weapons slicing through the void, but more drones came, faster than the crew expected. Jace's heart pounded. He had to do something. Standing frozen was not an option. He remembered a maintenance panel he had noticed earlier in the cargo hold. It was unguarded, and the wires inside glowed faintly. Maybe he could redirect power, create a diversion. He didn't know exactly how, but human intuition kicked in. He ran. The hallways blurred past him. Sparks flew from damaged conduits, and the smell of ozone filled the air. Reaching the panel, he yanked open the cover and studied the wiring. The device in his hand pulsed. Somehow, it seemed to sync with the ship's systems. With a deep breath, he connected it to the panel. The results were immediate. Lights flickered wildly, the ship's hum shifted, and the pirate drones hesitated. Jace didn't know why, but he didn't wait to understand. He pressed more buttons, twisted more wires, improvised with what little he knew from his work in the hub. The ship lurched, creating a temporary electromagnetic pulse that disabled the nearest drones. They tumbled silently through space, useless, their weapons offline. Alara watched from a secure point, her expression unreadable at first. Then her violet eyes widened slightly, a hint of approval showing. "Incredible," she murmured. By the time the pirates realized what had happened, Jace had rerouted power to the ship's defensive shields, giving them a temporary advantage. The remaining drones were forced to retreat. The crew cheered, though their relief was mixed with disbelief. They had never seen a human act like that, Jace sank to the floor, trembling, the device still warm in his hand. Alara approached him, kneeling beside him briefly. "You saved us," she said simply. "Not with weapons or training, but with your mind. That is the power of humans." He shook his head. I just did what felt right." "That is the difference," she replied. "Others follow rules. You follow instinct. And instinct is something even the galaxy's most advanced species cannot predict." For the next several days, the ship continued toward Gliza Prime. But nothing felt normal anymore. Crew members treated Jace differently, some with curiosity, others with caution. They asked questions quietly when they thought he wasn't listening. He noticed the way Alara consulted him on small decisions, from navigation routes to negotiations with traders along the way. Every action he took, no matter how minor, seemed to matter. Humans, it seemed, had value beyond what anyone in the Empire had believed. Jace began to understand that being ordinary was no longer an option. The universe had noticed him, and now he had to rise to the occasion. When they finally entered the orbit of Gliza Prime, the scale of the planet overwhelmed him. Cities stretched for hundreds of kilometers, towers glowing with soft energy, streets filled with alien vehicles of all sizes and shapes. Hovering ships moved in complex patterns, almost like schools of glowing fish in a dark ocean. The sheer size of the Empire made the hub feel like a tiny village in comparison. Alara turned to him. "The summit begins tomorrow. Many leaders will be here, each with their own agendas, each watching us carefully. You must stay alert. Observe, think, and do not underestimate anyone. And Jace, trust yourself. Trust himself." The thought echoed in his mind as they landed. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He was no longer just a clerk. He was part of something larger, something that could affect the balance of power across the galaxy. That evening, he explored a small garden in the palace grounds, a rare place of peace amid the grandeur. Strange plants glowed softly, and a gentle breeze carried scents that reminded him of Earth. He realized, as he looked at the stars beyond the palace dome, that this was only the beginning. If he could survive the summit, the challenges beyond would be even greater. But Jace was no longer afraid. The night's battle had taught him something vital. Fear was not the enemy. Inaction was. Humans survived not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they acted when others hesitated. Because they solved problems in ways no one expected. That was his edge. That was humanity's edge. As he turned to return to his quarters, the humming device in his pocket pulsed softly again. A faint glow lit the path ahead, almost like it was guiding him. He had no idea how it worked, or what it might do, but he trusted it. And somehow, he knew it would be important in the trials to come. For the first time in his life, Jace felt ready. Ready to leave invisibility behind. Ready to step into a galaxy that had never known what humans were truly capable of. And ready to prove, in ways even the most powerful empires could not ignore, that one ordinary human could become something extraordinary. The summit would be dangerous. There would be spies, politicians, assassins, and battles of wit that could decide the fate of thousands of worlds. But Jace no longer doubted himself. He was nobody no longer. He was human. And that, the galaxy would soon learn, was enough to change everything. Jace stepped off the transport onto Gliza Prime, the air crisp and tinged with alien minerals. The palace loomed above, a structure of smooth silver and glowing energy panels that stretched into the sky like a monument to power itself. He followed Princess Alara through halls filled with guards, diplomats, and courtiers, who watched him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Humans were rare here, and a human at the side of the princess was almost unheard of. The summit had begun. Alien leaders from dozens of star systems gathered in the grand hall. Their forms varied and strange. Some had translucent skin, others multiple limbs, and one had a head that floated above its shoulders, connected by glowing tendrils. They were all powerful, intelligent, and accustomed to negotiation, strategy, and intimidation, and they were all watching Jace. He felt exposed, a human among beings who had ruled empires for centuries. He could almost hear the thoughts. Why is he here? What can a human do? He kept his head low, eyes scanning, absorbing. He had learned that observation was just as important as action. Humans survived by noticing what others overlooked, by spotting patterns invisible to those who relied only on strength or protocol. Elara led him to a side room, a quiet chamber where only her closest advisors were allowed. "Tomorrow, the summit begins in earnest," she said, her violet eyes assessing him carefully. "Many factions will try to manipulate me, to push me into decisions that benefit them. You must watch, listen, and when the time comes, act." Jace swallowed nervously. "Act how? I'm not trained for this. I don't know their ways."
"That is exactly why you are needed," she replied. "Humans think differently."
"You will see what they miss. Trust your mind, Jace."
"That is your weapon." The first day of the summit was mostly ritual, formal speeches and exchanges of pleasantries.
Jace watched as Elara navigated complex conversations with alien diplomats, deflecting subtle threats and veiled insults with grace and intelligence. He noticed something the others didn't: the way small gestures, pauses, and eye contact conveyed power more than any words. And then he noticed a pattern. A group of delegates was whispering together, occasionally glancing toward the princess with carefully controlled expressions. Their words were subtle, but Jace's human intuition picked up the tension. They were planning something that could destabilize the summit. He alerted Elara quietly.
"There's a group over there,"
he said, nodding subtly toward the corner.
"They're not just talking.
They're plotting. I think it might be dangerous." She turned her sharp gaze toward the group, and a faint smile touched her lips.
"Excellent. What do you suggest?" Jace thought quickly. "If we draw them into a discussion where we control the topic, we can observe their intentions."
"If they try anything, we'll know in advance." Elara nodded. "Then we do that. You will be my guide in this. Lead me where others do not see." The next day, the real challenge began. The summit was a battlefield of diplomacy. Alien leaders proposed alliances, trade agreements, and even subtle threats. Some of them moved with precision, like predators testing the waters. Jace realized quickly that they underestimated humans. They saw his species as weak, fragile, and predictable. That assumption would be their mistake. During a lunch session, one of the larger delegates, a six-limbed being from the Orcs cluster, attempted to intimidate Elara with veiled threats over territory rights. Jace observed quietly, noticing small clues in the delegate's posture and speech. He leaned toward the princess and whispered a suggestion. "If we offer a controlled concession, we can test their honesty."
"Their reactions will tell us their true intentions." Elara raised an eyebrow.
"Do you think this will work?"
"It will," he said confidently. "We just need to stay calm and watch." They followed his plan.
Elara nodded politely, agreeing to the minor concession, and the Orcs delegate revealed his true nature almost immediately. His eyes flickered nervously, his gestures became sharper, and he tried to manipulate others at the table to cover his discomfort. The humans in the room, mostly Jace, recognized what the aliens could not: truth hidden in behavior. Elara's smile grew faint, but satisfied. "You are learning fast," she said later. "Perhaps faster than I anticipated." But the summit was far from over. That evening, Jace overheard a whisper in the corridors. Two alien advisors, confident that no human would understand their plan, spoke of an assassination attempt during the final session. Jace's heart raced. He had never faced death like this, yet he felt strangely calm. He knew that panic would not help anyone. Only quick thinking, improvisation, and observation would save them. He shared the warning with Elara. She didn't panic either. Instead, she leaned close and whispered, "Then we must be ready."
"I trust you, Jace. Show them what humans can do."
When the summit began the next morning, the palace was filled with tension. Jace noticed the subtle movements of the conspirators. They were carefully coordinating, waiting for a moment when the princess would be vulnerable. As predicted, mid-morning, the alarms blared. An energy barrier in the main hall flickered, and several hidden drones activated, aiming toward the princess's podium. Delegates panicked. Guards moved to intercept, but the conspirators had designed the attack to exploit delays. Jace's mind raced. He had no weapon, no formal training, but he had observation, improvisation, and courage. He remembered the humming device Alara had given him. It had helped him before, and somehow he trusted it again. Pulling it from his pocket, he activated it. The device emitted a soft pulse, almost like a ripple in the air, and the drones faltered. Their programming was disrupted, their attacks delayed. Using the distraction, Jace guided Alara and the closest guards through an emergency protocol. He noticed the weak points in the palace's security system, the gaps the conspirators had overlooked. With quick thinking, he rerouted energy from the lighting systems, temporarily blinding the drones and giving the guards the advantage. By the time the attack was over, several conspirators were incapacitated, and the rest were fleeing in confusion. The hall was silent, the delegates staring at Jace in disbelief. The human clerk, the nobody who had been invisible just days ago, had saved the princess, and, quite possibly, the summit. Alara looked at him, her violet eyes glowing with admiration. "You see, Jace, this is why humans are underestimated. You act when others hesitate. You think when others panic. That is our strength." For the first time, Jace felt a surge of pride. He was not just a clerk. He was someone who could make a difference, someone whose decisions and actions mattered in ways he had never imagined. The galaxy was vast and complex, but humans had a unique advantage: courage, creativity, and adaptability. The aftermath of the attack changed everything. Delegates who had doubted him now regarded him with cautious respect. Alara's advisors, initially skeptical, began to include him in strategic discussions. Jace found himself offering suggestions on alliances, trade negotiations, and security protocols. His ideas were simple but effective, based on logic, intuition, and observation. Things alien civilizations often overlooked in their pursuit of protocol and tradition. By the end of the week, the summit concluded successfully, with the Gliza Empire emerging stronger than before. The conspirators were captured or expelled, their plans foiled by the unexpected resourcefulness of a human. Jace walked through the palace gardens, reflecting on how far he had come. The soft glow of alien flora illuminated his path, and he realized that his life had changed forever. Alara joined him, walking silently for a few moments before speaking. "You have done more than I expected, Jace. You have proven something important. Not just to me, but to everyone here. Humans are capable of things even the most advanced civilizations cannot anticipate. You are living proof of that," Jace smiled, a mix of pride and disbelief. I never thought I could do anything like this. I was just a clerk. A nobody. Not anymore, she said firmly. You are a human, and humans are extraordinary. Never forget that. That night, Jace lay in his quarters, staring at the stars beyond the palace dome. He thought about the summit, the conspirators, and the countless beings who had underestimated humans. He realized that being human was not about strength or technology. It was about ingenuity, courage, and the ability to see solutions where others only saw problems. That was his edge. That was humanity's edge. And he knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, dangers, and mysteries. But humans, he understood now, had something unique. Something that no empire, no technology, and no alien strategy could fully counter. The universe might try to ignore it, might try to suppress it, but it could not erase it. Jace was ready. He had survived pirates, navigated alien ships, and foiled an assassination attempt. He had proven that humans could think, act, and triumph where others failed. The galaxy would learn sooner or later that one human could make a difference, and perhaps, just perhaps, change the course of history. As he drifted into sleep, the soft hum of the device in his pocket seemed to echo that truth. Tomorrow, there would be more challenges. More decisions, more dangers. But Jace no longer feared them. He had become something more than a nobody. He had become the human that the galaxy had not yet expected, and that was exactly the advantage he needed. The night after the summit was quiet, almost eerily so. Jace walked through the palace corridors, the soft glow of alien lights casting long shadows on the polished floors. His mind replayed the events of the last few days. The pirates in space, the whispers of conspirators, and the summit that had ended in chaos for some and triumph for the Gliese Empire. He still could not believe how much had changed in just a few weeks. He had gone from being a nobody to someone who mattered in ways he had never imagined. But there was no time to rest. Intelligence reports from Aelara's scouts indicated that a coalition of rival warlords, angry at the summit's outcome, was moving against the Gliese Empire. Their fleets were massive, and their strategies were aggressive. The palace could hold for now, but it was only a matter of time before they struck with full force. Aelara called him to the war room, a vast chamber filled with holographic maps, blinking consoles, and walls that shimmered with data streams. Her advisors were already there, discussing fleet movements and defensive protocols. Jace felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Every decision made in this room could decide the fate of billions. "You have been observing carefully," Aelara said, motioning him forward.
Tell me what you think. Jace looked at the map, tracing the paths of enemy fleets, noting their patterns and timing. He had spent hours memorizing the data, thinking about their likely strategies and weaknesses.
His mind raced. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. We did not have the fastest ships or the deadliest weapons. But humans were clever. Humans improvised. Humans saw what others overlooked. "The enemy assumes we will defend predictably," Jace said, pointing to a cluster of warships moving toward a strategic sector. "They expect our fleets to block the main approach. But they are leaving a gap here, near the asteroid field. If we can lure them in, we can trap them, isolate their ships, and neutralize them in small groups before they reach the palace."
Aelara's advisors murmured among themselves. Some doubted a human could have such insight.
Others were impressed. Aelara herself considered silently for a moment, then nodded. "Then we use your plan. We take advantage of their arrogance." The next day, the enemy fleet arrived, massive ships stretching across the void, weapons glowing, engines humming with power. The palace's fleet prepared for battle, its ships sleek and deadly. But the human strategy, Jace's strategy, was different. Instead of confronting the enemy head-on, they drew them toward the asteroid field. Jace watched from the command center, his hands clenched. He had never commanded a fleet before, but he knew patterns, probabilities, and human instincts. He directed small groups of ships, creating feints and distractions that the enemy could not predict. The alien warlords had anticipated standard tactics, but humans were unpredictable. The first wave of enemy ships entered the asteroid field thinking they had the advantage. Then, the trap was sprung. Mines hidden among the rocks detonated, damaging key vessels. Gliese fighters, guided by human intuition and precise timing, struck at vulnerable points. Ships were disabled. One by one, the coalition's numbers dwindling. Aelara watched with awe as Jace's plan unfolded perfectly. He had taken nothing for granted, considered every possibility, and improvised where necessary. Even when unexpected attacks occurred, he adapted instantly. One enemy ship broke formation and tried to escape, but Jace noticed its path and redirected interceptors to cut it off. Hours passed, and the tide of battle turned in favor of the Gliese Empire. Jace realized something vital. Humans could not match aliens in raw strength, but in strategy, observation, and improvisation, they could surpass even the most experienced fleets. As the last of the coalition ships fled or surrendered, the palace erupted in cheers. The human clerk, once invisible and ignored, had helped save the Empire from annihilation. His mind, his courage, and his quick thinking had turned certain defeat into victory. Later, in the aftermath of the battle, Jace walked through the palace gardens again, this time not as a guest, but as someone recognized and respected. Alara joined him, her expression calm but proud.
You have done more than I ever imagined, Jace. You have proven that humans are not weak.
You have shown that courage, ingenuity, and adaptability can change the course of history. Jace shook his head, still trying to process it all. I just did what felt right. I didn't think about being a hero.
I just reacted. Exactly, Alara said.
That is why humans are extraordinary. You act when others hesitate. You think when others panic. That combination. It is unique in the galaxy. The next weeks were filled with recognition, awards, and unprecedented attention. Delegates from other systems sought him out, curious about the human who had outsmarted entire fleets and foiled assassination attempts. Traitors, scholars, and even rival leaders wanted to understand how someone so ordinary by appearance could achieve so much. Jace found it strange. Being noticed, he was still himself. A human who liked simple things, who appreciated quiet moments. But now, the galaxy listened when he spoke. His observations were respected, his suggestions acted upon. And through it all, he remained humble, knowing that it was not luck, but human ingenuity and courage that had carried the day. One evening, as the sun, or the Gliza equivalent, set over the palace, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold, Alara approached him. She offered a choice: return to Earth in a life of quiet anonymity, or remain at her side as advisor, strategist, and confidant, helping shape the future of an empire. Jace considered it. Returning to his old life, he realized, would feel empty now. He had tasted the thrill of making a difference, of being seen for what he could do. He had learned that humans, though small and seemingly ordinary, had an edge no other species could predict. "I'll stay," he said finally. "If you'll have me." Alara smiled, her eyes reflecting pride in something warmer, something that made Jace feel at home, despite being thousands of light years from Earth. "Then, together," she said, "we will ensure that the galaxy never underestimates humans again." In the following months, Jace worked alongside Alara, guiding fleets, advising on diplomacy, and even training others in the art of human improvisation. His strategies became known across star systems, his name respected even in corners of the galaxy that had once dismissed humans entirely. And yet, he remained humble. He remembered the cantina where it all began, the simple device that had sparked his journey, and the night a princess chose his table. That memory reminded him of one truth. It was not titles, technology, or alien power that defined victory. It was courage, creativity, and the willingness to act when others would hesitate. The galaxy had tested him. Pirates, conspirators, and warlords had all assumed humans were weak, but humans were clever, resourceful, and unpredictable. They could see opportunities where others saw obstacles. They could act where others froze. And one human, an ordinary clerk, had proven it to the entire universe. Jace often thought about the people back on Earth. They might never know what he had done, the battles he had survived, the empires he had helped protect. But he knew something important. Humanity was stronger, braver, and more extraordinary than anyone had imagined, and he had become a part of that legacy. As he walked through the palace gardens one evening, watching stars blink across the sky, the device Alara had given him pulsed faintly in his pocket. It was a quiet reminder that the journey was not over, that challenges would come again. But Jace was ready. He was no longer invisible. He was no longer nobody. He was human. And humans, as the galaxy had learned, could achieve the impossible. The stars stretched infinitely above, vast and mysterious, yet no longer intimidating. For the first time, Jace felt at peace with the universe, and confident that humanity had a place among the stars, not as observers, but as innovators, heroes, and unexpected champions. And somewhere, deep in the palace, Princess Ilara watched him with a knowing smile, proud that she had seen in a human what others could not. Together, they would face whatever came next, with courage, intelligence, and the human spirit lighting the way. The galaxy had underestimated them both, and it would never do so again. I was nobody, until the alien princess chose my table.